Okay, Ashley's off in the self-care conversation, which means the authority figure is out of the room. It means I'm in charge of this room now. All right. Thanks for sticking around for my talk. Please feel free to pop over to the self-care conversation whenever you want. I will try my best not to take it personally. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome again to GCUC Canada in Banff. Thank you again for so much for making the trip out here. As you heard before, my name's Tony Bacigalupo. If you don't know how to pronounce my name, it's okay. It took me a few years. But it means kiss of the wolf. Baci is kiss, lupo is wolf, Bacigalupo. So that's how you say it. I don't know what kiss of the wolf means though. So.
Werewolf?
You know, who knows? Who knows? So we've got a fair bit of time here to talk business and business models and fundraising and all this good stuff. I've got a whole bunch of slides. We're going to run through a bunch of stuff, but I feel free to raise your hand, ask questions as you go. And actually, you know what? Okay, why don't we just have some fun while we're here, while we're doing this? Because I feel like this is the kind of conference where we can break it down, have some experimentation a little. So, oh yeah, good, transition, it worked. Okay, so money-related stuff, business model-related stuff, what kinds of questions are on your mind? Before I actually do the presentation, just in case I can customize it. Yes, go ahead. Shout it loud, shout it loud.
Fundraising for an expansion.
Fundraising for an expansion, okay, awesome, because expanding costs money. Money's got to come from somewhere, rather not be your pocket, preferably if it could come from someone else's. Very good. Okay, any others? Yeah, sure.
Opening up new spaces, so whether or not, like how to do that, and what type of business plan?
For opening new spaces, and so now you're managing more
Yes.
than just the one that you're physically in yourself. So that has some questions that come with it. Okay, cool. We'll see how we can make that fit in, but we'll always have more time at the end. Yeah, go ahead.
Creating a sustainable model before thinking of expanding.
Ooh, a sustainable model before thinking of expanding. Okay, good. Yes, we're definitely covering that one. Yeah, go ahead.
Trying to figure out how to live in the tension of good investment, a sound investment, but also living with the fact that we're trying to build community and really do others good at the same time. So not just opportunistic real estate model, but also building community. I think that's something I think a lot about.
All right, everybody basically caught that? Yeah. I got you covered on that one,
Yeah.
Clark. Awesome. Yeah? I saw another flutter of a hand. No? Okay. Yeah, what's up?
Partnership with landlords.
Partnering with landlords. Awesome. Yes, okay. Yeah, so if I forget any of this or if I don't cover it or whatever, we'll make sure we've got time to come back to it later because we can get into talking about all this stuff as we go. Awesome. Okay, shall we? Oh yeah, yes. Hello.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but just talking about in terms of the financial aspect of the design of co-working space.
Okay, yeah, the financial aspect of design. Okay. All right, it's in my head. If we don't get to it in the presentation, we'll get into it in the conversation. It rhymes, it's good, it's fun. Okay. All right, so, great. Welcome again, everybody. I am Tony Bacigalupo. I ran a space in New York City called New Work City because I like puns and I was very passionate about co-working, as I mentioned earlier. Back in 2007, there were no co-working spaces in New York City. Haha. And so I said, well, all these other people, there were co-working spaces in other cities, and New York's the best city, so if other cities have one co-working space, we should have at least two, you know, because we're New York. So if they have one, we should have, you know, two at least. Now there's like, I can't even count hundreds. But back in 2007, there weren't any, and people didn't really know what this co-working thing was. It was a funky thing, but for the people who had laptops and worked on Wi-Fi and you know, got sick of working from home like me, we wanted something like this. And so I made building Manhattan's first co-working space my mission, and we opened our doors on November 1st of 2008, which means we're going to be celebrating 10 years just a couple weeks. So we're very excited. I say celebrating, the space is no longer open. We closed a couple of years ago, but we ran for about 8 years, and the community is still growing strong, and there are actually several members from my community who are now starting their own co-working spaces in other parts of the world, which is super exciting. I've since transitioned, I don't have a slide for this, I've since transitioned to a consultancy, New Work Cities. So now I help other people build co-working spaces. Who here have I helped in some way with their space? Awesome, cool. So if you want to talk to them about it, I have a coaching network. We do group video chats, and we do all kinds of stuff. I have a toolkit of resources. We'll talk about it later. But basically, I took all of my experience actually running a space myself, including all the ways that I failed to secure good financing, and then turned that into a fiery passion, desire to make sure that none of you encounters any of the hardships I had to encounter, and that all of you are well taken care of in your journeys so that you can serve your communities for a good long time. And that's why I'm talking about money, because I want to make sure you make all the money you need to make in order for you to keep doing this for a long time, help a lot of people. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to cover kind of 3 major topics. First one's going to be sustainable models. So there are a lot of different ways that co-working spaces, co-working communities can be built. And it's gotten super, super diverse. And I think most people only kind of see maybe 1 or 2 versions of what co-working is. But it is getting so much more diverse now. There's co-working happening in every nook and cranny in so many different ways. So we're going to kind of go through that. So that you have a sense of what your options are. A lot of the times when I work with a client, they'll come to me thinking they want to do one thing, but then in the course of even just a brief conversation, we realize that they really actually should be doing something far easier and less expensive and more achievable that might pave the way to that more ambitious project. So it helps to kind of know what your options are. And even if you're currently running a space, you want to kind of know also what your options are, potentially as far as expansion. We'll get into that. Next thing is income and expenses. So just some basic stuff for those of you who are just kind of wondering what goes into the numbers. What can you make money on, and what are you going to be spending money on? And again, even if you're running a space, it might help to just kind of review the kinds of things you could be using to generate income. And then how to raise funds. How do we get some money? And it'll be not just money, but how to do stuff that maybe makes it possible for you to not have to spend money, which is just as good. Yeah, we good?
Yeah.
Let's go right into it. So sustainable models. So, as I mentioned, know your options. There are a lot of people, I think, who have gone down a certain path, spent a lot of money when they could have saved money by doing something a little bit easier. And it really just comes down to risk and reward. The bigger your undertaking, the more money you can make in general, but the more you're going to have to risk in order to do that. And so what we want to try to get a sense of for you, and again, even if you're running a space, your own disposition. Maybe it's cool to keep running one. Maybe you want to run multiple ones. Maybe there's different ways to approach that. There's ways to deepen your work within an existing space. So there's kind of different ways to evolve and to grow. And so we can kind of keep that in mind as we're looking through these things. So just to kind of give you a quick blow through of the options as I know them. This isn't all of them, but just to kind of prime you on this. So first and foremost, the smallest, easiest thing you can do is just organize a group. You don't have to rent an office space in order to build a co-working community. The beauty of the world that we have right now is that we have laptops, we have Wi-Fi. If we gather people in anywhere that has a signal, then you can have a co-working community. And it costs you $0, which is super useful because that allows you to build momentum, it allows you to build interest, it allows you to have fun, and it allows you to be successful. And this is something really important. I talk with people who are aspiring to build co-working spaces, but they're starting in cafes, which is what I tell everybody to do. But they talk about it as if like, well, the real co-working project is gonna come and this is what it's gonna look like when it's done. No. You're in a cafe, it's a successful cafe co-working community right now. And you can stay there as long as you need to. And like when I got started, we were in a cafe for like 1.5 years, and it took way longer than I thought it would. But for as long as we were there, we were successful at doing that. And it may turn out, maybe you don't want to build a co-working space. That's okay. That is a valid outcome, right? So, if you just end up, hanging out in a cafe, having like the perfect spot, the perfect community. You don't have to spend any money. Maybe you get all the benefit that you wanted out of getting into this in the first place. Who knows? So it's a good home base to start with for anybody. Partnering with underutilized spaces. So this is a very, a kind of a hot topic that's happening in the last couple of years, and I think it's going to continue to be a big deal. Restaurants, there's several companies in New York doing this. The most prominent one is Spacious, where they actually take restaurants that are only open for dinner, and then they turn them into pop-up co-working spaces in the daytime. Makes it super cheap. Churches are a big deal, and where's Darren? Is Darren here or she's in the other room? Darren is in the other room. She's working with churches to help them turn into co-working spaces. So basically, there's lots of places that are underused and that could be a good place to hang out and do some work. And so again, those kinds of places could be no direct cost to you. Could be a revenue share, could be a lot of ways of approaching it. So as you can see with the small options, we're kind of keeping our costs low while being able to deliver a lot of wins. Co-working plus agency. So this is a really great sustainable model at the lowest scale, in the sense that you don't have to lease up a lot of space for it to work. And the way it works is this: either you or somebody that you know runs some kind of a creative agency, a web development firm, an advertising firm, marketing firm, design firm, whatever it is. So it's a creative group. Maybe they're hiring a fluid workforce of freelancers, things like that. And they kind of are very co-working adjacent. They have a kind of a similar ethos and culture. That agency might say, okay, we need to upgrade our space. Maybe we're in a co-working space now, we need to get our own office, or maybe we have an office, but we're growing, and we need 10 desks, but we're gonna get 20, or we're gonna get 30. So now the agency has the office that it was gonna have anyway, but it lays out a little bit more to get a larger space, and then the rest of it's co-working. And that can be just kind of lightweight managed co-working, or it can be a whole co-working community with the agency as the anchor tenant. But what's so great about this model is that everybody wins. The two models de-risk each other. So if the agency has some tough times with finding clients, the co-working space can generate some profits that help to lighten the load. And if the co-working space is a little light on desk rentals, the agency can kind of back it up. So you just need to not screw both up at the same time for too long. So I used to live in Boulder, Colorado, where this is rampant. There's like 20 of these in Boulder. There's so many little agency co-working spaces, and it's really neat. And so beyond that, and we'll get more into this in more detail later, the members of the co-working space might get hired by the agency. The agency now has a pool of talent to work with, and they all have deal flow that they can pass along to each other. So everybody gets to make money and help each other out. So you can do that at a pretty low scale, pretty low risk. And again, if you don't run an agency, maybe you know someone who does. It's someone to keep on your Rolodex and keep in touch with, because that person might be able to be the person who gets you into your expanded space or your new space without you having to lay out all the cash yourself. Medium options, so co-working only, kind of the standard big room, open long tables, dedicated desks, conference rooms, that kind of thing. It's actually becoming, I feel, kind of less common right now. So let's just add in co-working plus offices. So co-working plus offices is kind of becoming the standard. I'm throwing in co-working plus cafe because we do see some of that going on now as well. There are some cafe spaces where you can come in, get a cup of coffee up front, maybe even get online, but then there's actual proper co-working space behind a door, and you pay for access to the co-working space by the hour or by the day. There's a place in San Francisco called Workshop Cafe, has a great cachet around this. And some other kind of similar things. But co-working plus offices is kind of becoming the standard model. Let's say more than 5,000 feet, maybe 7,500, 10,000 to 20,000 feet, in that range. Most of it is offices. They tend to produce most of the profit, and the rest of it kind of gives people the reason to want to come to your space as opposed to just renting an office somewhere else. So that's kind of like the standard thing, but leasing and building out 10, 20,000 square feet is, not nothing for most of us. So it's something that we got to work our way up to. Co-working and events. So I should mention, obviously, a lot of these things can be mixed and matched and should. I would say that, you know, a co-working space I would advise probably would have at least 2 of the things that are up on this menu. But co-working plus event space, there are some that particularly emphasize this, where event programming, educational programming, after-hours programming is a heavy, heavy part of their business model. It's a lot of work, it's a whole business unto itself, so you gotta kind of hire for it and really have the connections for it. But it provides tremendous flow of traffic into your space and can really help to underscore the purpose behind what you're doing. And so, yeah, so we can talk more about that. Large options, so just to kind of think about it in terms of this, whole buildings, there are people who own buildings, and maybe it's part of a larger strategic plan, or maybe you've got a cafe in the ground floor, you know, co-working on the 2nd floor, offices on the 3rd floor, and an incubator on the top floor, whatever it is. There's a lot of ways that you can play with it. If you own a building, or if you're friends with someone who does and they don't know what to do with it, it's a whole other project. Campuses, so this is another thing where maybe, you know, a developer has a plot of land, they're trying to get support from the city, they want to do economic development stuff. I consulted on a project for this in the UK where they have, you know, an arts thing here and an event space there and a co-working thing here and a hotel there, and it's all part of a cohesive project where they can all support each other. And then multiple locations, you know, as we talked about, and take any of these things and multiply them. How am I doing so far?
Great.
Yeah? Yeah, hit me.
Great. No, I was just giving you a big thumbs up.
Oh, thumbs up. Okay, cool. I'll take it. All right. Whew. Okay, income and expenses. If you're already running a space, you probably know most of this, but we can at least think about, you know, hey, is there something you could be making money on that you're not yet? Oh, I didn't make the little step through thing like it before. Okay, we're just gonna see them all at once now. So membership, obviously, pretty obvious, and it's obviously obvious. It's redundantly redundant, and private offices, those are your 2 kind of main things that you can count on. Space rental. So I'm using space rental as a generic way of encapsulating a few things. There's conference room rental, which could be a terrific source of income. It could be a terrific pain in the ass. You know, we can talk more about the nuances of that at some point. And event space rental, which is also potentially very profitable and also potentially very annoying. But if you have the inclination towards it, and you think that the market is there and you've got the right kind of connections, it could be a nice source of income. And if you're able to do like conference type things like this, you know, maybe not exactly at this level, but you know, if you're able to host like weekend conferences, you could, you know, make some significant money on it. You're just gonna need, you know, some dedicated staff. Retail sales, if you're in a storefront, cafe, t-shirts, that kind of thing. I have a dream, and I haven't seen it yet, of a co-working space that really rocks the retail game. Like they have kind of like a, you know, like a curated store for just the mobile workforce type stuff. You know, sell the really cool overpriced like backpacks and the notebooks and the adapters and all that stuff, and like hipstery t-shirts. Somebody build this, please. I want to go visit. That's yours, yeah?
Well, it's a plan, no.
It's a plan, yeah, yeah. Where?
In Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Yeah, what?
Come to Seattle.
Seattle? Oh, it's the retail table over there. Okay, we gotta talk more about this. It's gonna be great. We should talk what products are we should all do an unconference on what products should be in your spaces. Yes, and hey, we can sell products in our, you know, non-retail storefront spaces, right? Yo.
So we're looking at doing some retail sales as well, getting co-workers to collaborate on the designs for products, and then selling them like print-on-demand products, and then having all of the proceeds from that going towards sponsoring desks for like even more Explain that, how that,
Unconference.
Yeah.
I did not track. Okay.
Here, I'll take that and just share a story, and then we're gonna need to unconference about this for sure. This is why the unconference is so useful, because we just popped some. I thought I was gonna blow right past retail. So people in a co-working community tend to be creative and amazing and talented, and when you give them a chance to show off what they have to share, so the space that I was involved in Boulder, we did a made by freelancer holiday market for Christmas time, and any member who wanted to could have a booth and we turned the whole space into like a convention, you know? And it was on the ground floor, it was like right downtown, so it was a really good thing. But the stuff that these members pulled out of their closets was unbelievable. I mean, they were making prints of art, and they were making soap, and they had like maps of Boulder for cyclists, and they had like all these different things. It was very, very diverse, and all of it was spectacularly good. And they sold their stuff, and they made money. And everyone got to come through and see all the stuff that they were making, which was so great. And then you can also put that up on the walls. You know, if you have shelving that's able to display the stuff that your members are making, even if it's not for sale, to be able to show like, hey, the people who work here make stuff like this stuff. Oh, so much fun you can have with that. What were we gonna say over there?
There's a space that I know of in Edmonton, and she caters a lot to women or expecting women, and she does markets for people that are doing handmade, handcrafted stuff, and I think she's in her 4th or 5th year where she has pop-up market spots, because a lot of these women are very, like you said, creative. They want to do a market, but some of the big ones are extremely expensive to get into, and she's like, well, you're a member, you're in. And she's like, they do really, really well, and around Christmas time where they need that extra income, it's great.
Cool. I feel like we're at the beginning of a new trend here. She's in Edmonton?
Yeah.
What's she doing Tuesday? I gotta get her over here.
She's actually a doula, so she has 2 women expecting any day now.
All right.
Fair enough.
I'll take it. I'll take it. All right. So, are we good on retail? We want to keep. No, we're going to unconference this. So we'll sidebar this. We're going to spend some more time figuring this out. Sponsorship. So we're going to talk a fair bit about getting money from other people who have a shared interest in what you're doing. But sponsorship could be crazy valuable to you, crazy lucrative, and we're going to get more into that in a little bit. Amenities, so this is one of my least favorite things, but depending on what kind of a space you build, especially on a larger scale, renting out lockers, virtual office, some people do receptionist services, other kind of business servicey type things that you could do to kind of, you know, give people optional upgrades for their businesses. Maybe storage space for their stuff, that kind of thing. And side business. So the reason that I'm bringing this up, kind of like the agency thing, is there are some people that run a space that doesn't make any money. It's maybe it's a little space or whatever it is, and it just kind of, makes enough money to get by. But the person who runs it doesn't have to do a lot of work to run it either. But they have another business, and that other business is what they really do for a living. But by running this co-working space, they're now making friends in the community, and they're building their standing, and maybe they're doing some networking. And so the profit actually comes from the other thing that isn't the co-working business itself. So it's a valid way that it works. There are probably other ways as well, but this is at least a good start for us. And then in terms of expenses, and I'm just kind of really going to blow through this. We can get into it in more detail later, but staff is expensive, and there are ways that we can mitigate that, but it is what it is. Rent, also expensive, unless you can get someone to give you space for free, or you can do a joint. It's happened. It has happened. People have gotten space for free. Or a joint venture partnership where you don't have to pay rent, but you have to share the income, which, workable. Whoa, okay, we'll come back to that. Insurance, got to insure yourself, utilities, internet. I'll just say real quick, if you haven't started a space yet, or even if you're running one, this is a place to spare no expense. I got by on the seat of my pants. I totally bootstrapped everything. It was super Craigslist, IKEA style, but we got the best internet we possibly could. We actually had multiple internet connections. So we had the best internet we could, and then we had another internet connection, completely different provider, which totally saved our butts on the 3 days a year when the internet was just shot all day, because internet's oxygen to your members. As soon as the internet goes off, the clock starts ticking, and it starts ticking hard and fast, right? So you need to be able to handle that. This is also why it's really handy if you're friends with the other co-working spaces in the area. You can totally save each other every now and then. A whole bunch of other reasons why to be friends with the other co-working spaces, by the way. We could talk about that if you want. Not now. Office supplies, office supplies, it is what it is, and we use way more ink and coffee than you think. software, so you know, co-working space management software and stuff like that, marketing, any of a million different ways to do that, and improvements to the space and maintenance and fix-ups, things like that. And there are a bunch more, but I just want to kind of give you a rough idea of what to have in mind. I have a business model template that I sell. It's also something you get when you're in my community, and we go through all of this stuff where we kind of figure out you know, how many desks you can fit in a given space, and you know, we play with the numbers and we try to do this. You can use mine, you can use your own. I have a free version as well, but when you're getting started, when you're thinking of opening a space, you want to figure out, well, how many people can I fit? And then that gives me a starting point. And then, you know, how much can I charge? How much can I make? And then we can estimate the costs of all these different things, put them into a formula, and then we come up with your projections. So the reason, oh boy, wow, this is actually, I don't think I even know, oh no, it does make money. Okay, thank goodness. I didn't see green anywhere, but I think it's just the screen isn't very green. Okay. Anyway, so I just wanted to give you kind of a sense of what that looks like when I work with a client, and how those numbers work when you actually plug them in a spreadsheet. Okay, this is the part that I'm most excited about, which is getting you money. How's that sound? We good? We're up to part, how long have I been? It's only been 22 minutes, for goodness gracious. Okay, we're gonna have lots of time for Q&A. We might even start a new business before this panel's over. So. Let's talk about how to raise funds. First things first. All right, now we're gonna do handheld. Okay, what you're doing is important. And I want to actually not talk too fast and slow down and let that sink in, because it makes a really, really huge difference. What you're doing is important, and we're gonna go into this in detail, because this is the foundation for how we're gonna tell the story that's gonna get you the money and the support that you need for this project, your next project, or you know, whatever it is, to be successful. So let's just start with the counter example. If someone comes up to me, a stranger, and says, what do you do? And I say, oh, I run a co-working space, or I'm working on building a co-working space. And they say, what's that? And I say, well, it's an office where people sit, and they pay me money to be on the internet. You know? Oh, okay, boring. But is that really what's happening?
No.
No, thank you. No. That's just the starting point. All the good stuff is everything else. That's the bread. And we're talking about the best sandwich you've ever had. So let's talk about what's in between the bread. You're gonna help hundreds of people start new businesses per year, or well, maybe per year, maybe thousands of people over the course of a couple of years. Let's just say lots of. We're gonna help lots of people start businesses. That's a non-trivial thing. I feel like I hear politicians talk about this a lot. You know, oh, we're gonna foster job creation and small business growth. Yeah, we're doing it, so that's cool. Do you hear that story being told though? It's true, like you kind of hear it vaguely referred to, but it doesn't. It's this real estate conversation that we keep hearing about, and commercial real estate and WeWork and all this stuff, but there's so much cooler stuff that's going on in these spaces, and this is the thing that I came here to be on a mission to really push forward for the movement, is to talk about the impact that co-working is having, the untold story that we're having, and the business creation is one of the most obvious and valuable manifestations. And it's not just creation, it's growing. People might start out, I had a guy who was a one-man consultant for, he did Android app development in New York. And he was one-man shop. And he came into our space, he was already running his one-man business, but then after a year he was 2, and after a couple years he was 5, and now he's like 15, and they have their own office, and they're like one of the biggest Android development shops in New York City. And you know, he credited us as being a huge part of helping him go from 1 to 15. Impact, right? That makes a big difference. Those people are all making a salary and paying taxes, and you know, spending that money in that city that they wouldn't have if that guy's business didn't grow. Provides a home for local events, so this is a huge one for me. I was such a big supporter of meetup groups and various other things. Gatherings make a huge difference, and your co-working space makes a difference by providing the gathering that it's doing, but by being a venue for other people to do gatherings that they might have struggled to do otherwise, you're able to like multiply, amplify your impact. right? So if somebody wants to start a group, and right now they're doing it in the back of a noisy bar, but they can do it in your space and they can grow it and establish themselves and really foster that, then whatever it is that they're doing gets to grow, and you have now enabled all of that impact to happen as well. Multiply that by a few meetup groups and you can see this is getting even more exciting as we go. Helping people to develop skills. So specifically with regards to the programming, you could be doing skill development type stuff. And if you're talking about digital literacy, code school type stuff, business basics, finance basics, that kind of thing, helping people learn how to start businesses or how to more sustainably run their businesses is tremendously empowering. And it changes economic situations for underserved populations. There's a lot that we can do there in terms of skill development. Eases the load on infrastructure. I'm putting this in because it serves to illustrate just how much good these spaces are doing for their areas that we're not talking about. If someone doesn't have to commute all the way into downtown and they can stay local, it eases traffic. If you are in an area where there are brownouts when it's really hot outside because everyone's working in their homes with their individual air conditioners and they can all go hang out in one place and share an air conditioner, maybe we're easing the load on the power infrastructure. That sounds useful, doesn't it? Right? Could we be doing PR campaigns specifically around that and ask the city to help us out? I don't know, maybe. I hope somebody does. Increases spending in the neighborhood. I don't know about you, but when I go work in a co-working space, I spend a lot of money on the food and drink in the neighboring area. And I'll tell you, not just that, that's obvious, right? The deli across the street from your co-working space is going to be very grateful that you were there. But in addition, if you're doing a lot of event programming, there's so much more money that a lot of other people are going to make because of the events that you're hosting. When we opened our new space in 2010 on Broadway in Manhattan, we had a startup weekend. We had, I think it was the first startup weekend in New York City, or maybe the second one or whatever, it was in our space, and we had like 150 people coming in. And so there was a really great, like high quality gourmet pizza place, Salugi's on Church Street, Tribeca. Might be the most valuable thing you learned today. I hope not. It's good, but not that good. So I'm not saying it's not that good, it's really good. But we ordered 42 pies. And when they arrived, the owner came in carrying the pies, and he said, I needed to meet you guys because this is the biggest order we've ever had. And we ended up having a very illustrious friendship with that guy for the next 5 years, including like a standing discount, so any member could go there and get a discount on pizza. He was always on top of service. When we had an event, we needed more food, he'd be on it, right? He'd always be throwing in bonus stuff. We threw a party once with an open bar. We ran out of liquor when all the liquor stores were closed, and he actually brought us liquor for free. I mean, friendships, right? Fortuitous friendships. That guy made a lot of money because of us. Reduces brain drain. So if you're in a city where brain drain's a problem, now we're giving people a reason to stick around because people are building awesome businesses in your city and not in my city. So that's good. Creates jobs. As I mentioned, we've already talked a lot about that. Saves lives. Yes, it's true. People don't die because of the good things that happen in co-working spaces. And I actually didn't even realize this until just now as I'm saying this, that I wasn't even thinking of this from a mental health and emotional wellness perspective, but it's definitely true. And we know, don't all the studies say that we're lonelier than ever now? Yeah, and we've got serious issues, depression, opioids. I mean, we got a lot of issues right now, and a lot of it comes down to people are lonely and they don't know where to go where they can feel like they can hang out and be accepted and belong. So that wasn't even why I brought it up there. I brought it up because some spaces do blood drives where and there's multiple times a year, and they've donated thousands of pints of blood, which is obviously super useful. We had a friend in our community who was diagnosed with leukemia, and we did bone marrow registration drives, and it inspired other people to do drives all over the country. We found him a donor, and he didn't die, specifically because of the drives that we all did. And, by the way, thousands of people registered for the bone marrow registry, and other lives have been saved as a result of all those things. So just our one little space helping our one friend has had this domino effect of saving other people's lives, which is, right? Great. Can we acknowledge how awesome this movement is for a second? Thank you. and generates happy memories. Let's just put it up there. I don't know if we're going to be able to get anyone to give us money for this, but at least it helps in the heart. Okay, so co-working makes a huge, oh, sorry, go ahead. There you go. Yeah, because that's the full, you know. Okay. We got plenty of time here. I think it's worth sitting with this and really emphasizing it. And you're realizing that we're talking about money, but we're not really talking about money yet. But there's a reason we're talking about this, so you can kind of get a sense of it, right? Which is, who is an interest in all of this stuff that we just went through? Who stands to benefit from this? Well, the city, because again, we're doing their job for them. We're economic developing, right? And the state or provincial government stands to benefit, and the national government stands to benefit. Because we're creating jobs and we're increasing the tax base. So we're doing all kinds of good stuff. And we're solving brain drain, and we're helping alleviate the infrastructure. In fact, you know, just let us handle it. Just stay out, you know. Okay, and big companies benefit. We're generating all kinds of innovative new projects that might be able to help them. We might be generating talented people who now have skills that they can hire for their projects. Big companies are always looking for innovative kind of groups to work with. And a lot of times they don't know how to find creative, independent people because they're too, you know, in their own corporate worlds. So if they can be a part of what you're doing, they get access to some amazing brains. Yes?
So when you approach big companies and you're like, well, we're amazing, come help us, and they're like, no. But then they're like, we're mandated to find cool, innovative stuff. And you're like, we are cool and innovative. How do you work around that? Because it drives me nuts that they're like, whoa, we have a really big innovation and like makerspace scene in my city, and I'm trying to be like, we need, you know it. But it's really frustrating when you approach the big companies and they're like, oh yeah, we do all this cool stuff. But what?
Yeah, okay, we're gonna, if I haven't answered it by the end, then we'll dive deeper. I have some thoughts about how to approach it because I've had a lot of the same headaches. Small companies, that's obvious, we've talked about that. Nonprofits, for all kinds of reasons, you can be facilitating all kinds of great things for them with your community. Rallying your community around causes is terrific. If you know All Good Work.space, if any of you are familiar with that, that allows you to offer up your unused space to nonprofits in your area, and they'll matchmake you to a deserving nonprofit, so you can turn your empty space into something valuable for them. They're only in certain cities, but get on their mailing list, email them, tell them Tony sent you. The local bank. So if people are doing business in your area, then they're putting money in the bank, and that is of interest to the manager of your local bank. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because we're going to talk about this in a minute, but do you know who is managing your local banks? And can you know who is managing your local banks? Something that we're going to be thinking about. We didn't really explicitly communicate this is going to be like an interactive workshop or something, but if you have the ability to take notes or write stuff down, we'll kind of do a little bit of interactive stuff around this in a moment. The local IT firm. So when we got started, we were friends with some guys who did IT services, and they knew that befriending us was a smart investment for them. And so when we got started in that little space in November 2008, when I did not have the money to outfit the space in the way that I really needed to for good infrastructure, they had a bunch of equipment in a closet, like high-end good stuff that they just, you know, like their client upgraded and they stuck it in the closet, and they came in and they lit up our whole space with super high-end stuff that we never could have bought ourselves, and they put their company sticker on it. And we invited them to the party, and we did a little bit of a, you know, work trade thing, so whenever anybody in our space needed help, we knew where to send them. We sent them to those guys. So they stand to benefit. CPAs, you got a lot of people doing business in your space. They're gonna need to do taxes eventually. So CPAs, there was one in my space, Gina, friendliest lady, and I know why she's friendly, because she was making so much money off of my members. She was friendly anyway, but she had a good reason to be friendly, is because she was doing everyone's taxes, and they were so grateful to have a sweet, professional, awesome CPA right over there that they could just pop over and say hi to. Lawyers, same thing as the IT service firm. Local breweries, if you're, I'm hearing some snaps, yeah. Breweries, distilleries, wine places. Not every co-working space is a den of drinking, but a lot of them are places where people like to drink beer and stuff. And so if you can befriend a local brewery, maybe they're gonna donate kegs and stuff to your parties, things like that. Same thing with coffee providers, food providers, things like that, and local community organizers, as we mentioned, being able to host events, meetup groups, things like that. And so many more, right? Everybody in your town benefits from you existing because you're upping the economy and you're creating all this opportunity. So, as we can see, we're creating a lot of benefit, and there's a lot of benefit to a lot of people. And that means that these people can help us. And this is where I want all of you to be doing the best possible job you can, because the more of these people you can recruit to support you in some way, the easier your job gets. And that's really what I'm emphasizing here. So I don't know why this is here. Okay, we're just gonna skip that. By doing what you do, you're gonna help these people. And so when you help them to recognize the fact that what you're doing is going to help them, then they're going to wanna help you, and now we're gonna be able to have a conversation in a way that is maybe not like that kind of corporate wall that we hit. So let's make a list. All the things that we just saw, who are people that you know at every one of these things in your city? If you already know everybody, then you don't have to do this, but I don't think you do. So if you know people here that you haven't been talking to and you haven't gotten their support yet, then we can start to identify who are some of these people that might be able to support you and that you haven't made that right ask or that right connection yet. And, and who don't you know yet? So who should you know? Is there somebody that you don't know, but maybe you got to start find a way to get, work your connections to get connected to that person. So in theory, you should be able to have connections at all of these things. And somewhere on that list of people is somebody who either themselves or by way of introduction is going to be able to get you a big fat sponsorship or a loan, or might prepay for some desks for some students to come in, right? Or might be able to provide in-kind services. Actually, wait, am I gonna go through this? All right, well, let's go through this, and then if I miss something, we'll come out. Identify the people you believe might be most effective. So if you start compiling a list of people on all these things, eventually, like you got the long list, and then you start to circle the ones where like, oh yeah, this person, she's the super connector in town, or she's the really powerful, influential one who has all the knowledge of the city government, whatever. You can start to highlight kind of your VIPs, and those are the people we really want to understand. And then for those, whatever that is, 2 to 5 to 10 people, contact them personally, one-on-one, email, text message, 2 sentences, right? It's really simple, like, hey, I'm working on this thing, I'd love to get your thoughts, when can we meet? Send, copy, paste, send, copy, paste, send, right? And let's get some meetings. Meet them, build a relationship, and during this time, we want to be listening to them and what's going on in their world. Because as we've established, you're going to be doing a lot of good in a lot of different ways, but how that's going to be useful to someone else is going to really depend on what is going on in their world. So if you, let's say, I did this where I raised sponsorship for a bunch of event programming that we did at Newark City, where we had, we basically wanted to host meetup groups without having to charge them. So we had them apply for this program where we basically said, we're gonna find sponsors to underwrite you being here. And so then I was going and meeting with big companies. I was meeting with Microsoft and Google and all those folks. And if I'm meeting with someone from Microsoft, what the opportunity is going to depend on what department that guy happens to be in, and I could meet with 20 people from Microsoft, and all 20 of them are going to have different priorities. So that's going to make a difference. And then it's a matter of, well, what's on your mind right now? What's your priority for 2019? And so if you have in your head, I'm going to make a proposal to Microsoft for this thing because that's what I think they want, or that's what I want them to want, then that's where you might hit a wall. But if you go to that contact at Microsoft and you say, well, what's going on for you guys? What are you thinking about for next year? What are you trying to figure out? And they say, you know, oh, well, we really want to support people from underserved communities getting tech education. Awesome, great, we can design a whole program around that. You throw me enough money, we can solve that for you, right? But it could be, well, we want more startups to try out our new platforms and give us feedback. Great, we can give you a proposal for that too, you know? Like there's a lot we can do, but I need to know what hurts for you first, and then we can figure out how to alleviate that. So that's how we're gonna kind of keep that grooving. How am I doing? Are we good?
Yeah, great.
Okay, good. All right. And then when the time is right, that's when we prepare something off. And the reason I say prepare is because we don't know for sure that we're gonna make the pitch yet. We're starting to outline it. So if you go to this person and say, hey, I know last time we spoke, you said you wanted to support underserved communities to learn tech. We're thinking of doing a program that's gonna do exactly that. Can I send you an outline of a thing that you could look at? And with bigger organizations, this is useful because they're not the ones signing the check. They're a person who works for the company. And that person can give you a little bit of an inside skinny on how things work at the company. And that's super, super valuable. So you get their feedback and they say, this is great, here's the thing. And I've had this happen where somebody said, I can authorize up to $5,000 sponsorships without any other person having to be involved. If it's above that, then it has to go to committee and it's never gonna happen, right? So it's like, okay, great. I'm not gonna send that person a $10,000 proposal, I'm gonna send them a $4,999 proposal because I know that they can snap their fingers and make it happen. So in recruiting this person to work with you to figure out how to work the company politics enables you to not do what I had to do a dozen other times, which is sweat for hours and hours over laboring on a proposal that falls flat, you know? I asked for 20 grand for whatever for this company, and then I hear nothing, and then I chase them and I chase them and I chase them, and they're like, oh yeah, sorry, no. You know, I'm like, well, I spent like a gazillion hours on that proposal and I didn't enjoy a single minute. If we can know that what we're doing is gonna be well received because we've recruited this person to help us, then it makes it a lot less scary. Yeah, so repeat that process until you can start closing some deals. And I guess I just want to kind of review, because kind of the same way there's a lot of different business models for co-working, there's a lot of different ways for people to provide you value, and we don't want to just get caught up in asking everybody to give us cash. So let's talk about that. Paid memberships, people can be members, people can also pay for other people to be members, so there's all kinds of fun things we can do there. I'll also mention, some people have memberships that don't involve renting space. And I think it's valuable to also keep in mind that what we're doing here is creating an organization that is in the business of fostering all of this impact. And it just so happens that one of the things your organization does is operate a physical space to do stuff in. But the organization is doing all this cool stuff. And you could be a member of that organization, maybe for 30 bucks a month or 50 bucks a month or $100 a year or whatever it is to support the organization and its mission, even if you have no need whatsoever for co-working space. And there's some people that are making good money selling memberships that have nothing to do with actually renting workspace. So there you go. Space rentals, so as we mentioned before, right? Event revenue, we've talked about that. Event traffic, so if you find somebody who is an amazing potential collaborator, but they ain't ever gonna give you money because they don't got it. I don't know why I'm talking like this. But they are passionate organizers and they convene people and they gather people and they can do all this great stuff. If they can bring people into your space, that's hugely valuable to you. So the ask might be for that person, hey, you wanna throw a party at my place? You know, like what's something you've been thinking about doing? Let's do something really fun. And that could, you know, eventually convert to real value for you. Sponsorships, as we've talked about, it's a big emphasis for me, and that's kind of been my focus for a lot of this. In-kind contributions, so a lot of stuff, a lot of times somebody will say, and this could be small business, could be large business, the local brewery, it could be Microsoft, where they say, look, cash is hard, but I can give you lots of valuable product. And so the more relationships you're able to build with service providers, vendors, technology providers, things like that. The right kind of product is as good as cash for a lot of what we're looking to do. Discounts, same kind of idea. I might be, for like a furniture provider, this is a good topic. So all kinds of things you can do there. Cross promotion. So again, like a government, for example, might be able to hook you up with a huge sum of money, or they might be able to give you a building, but maybe not. Maybe they can simply amplify the message of what you're doing. And they're the government. They kind of got a pretty big bullhorn. So that could be, again, as good as money on its own. And again, if you're like talking to that person at the city council or whatever, and they say, look, money's gonna be tough, you say, great, how about a press release? That's an easier yes. Loans, this was big for me when we were moving again to our new space in 2010, which I still call the new space, even though, from 2010. But we didn't have enough money. We did a Kickstarter campaign and we raised some money from that. We raised some money through some other things, but we had members who just personally loaned us money. And it was a super low interest rate, and we paid them back over the course of 5 years or so. But they gave us money that the bank wouldn't. And $5 grand, 10 grand here and there adds up. So personal loans help, and investments if you want to go that direction. Okay, so let's recap. The general gist of what we're doing here is we commit to doing great work, we find people who stand to benefit or have an interest in that work, and then we get some kind of value from that connection between those things. And then we repeat, and we repeat, and we repeat. So what I don't want you to do is just struggle to build this thing yourself, and to have too few avenues or channels at your disposal. So that's why I'm doing all this. I want you to have as much support around you, so that you're not doing this on your own. And that same, for expansion or for starting something new. I'm realizing that I skipped some slides that aren't skipping, so let me just see about this. This was like, it's like you're drafting and then like, wow, these are great, but there's no room for them here. Anyway, okay, get professional. So, so I was gonna go through some examples, but I've already given you a bunch of them. Yes, if you want to join my club, we have the group coaching program. It's month to month. It's $99 a month, but it's $49 a month for the first 2 months. And we can work through everything I just talked about in specific detail for you. So feel free to join up on there. I would love to have you. And we've got a few customers in the audience who can tell you how awesome it is, I hope. And that's my presentation. So thanks. I'll say this out loud. Go make money and help lots of people. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got plenty of time. What do you think? Give me some thoughts, give me some questions. And can somebody run this mic around, or can we all hear each other? Are we good?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, go for it. Say your name too, and where you're from.
My name is Sheris from Seattle, Washington. So I had a question around communicating the impact of business growth, because we don't necessarily offer an incubator program or any business development classes. We definitely want to in the future, but I struggle with when I'm giving tours or people are interested, how do you communicate that if it doesn't seem, because we see it in the growth of just having an affordable space to work, right? But I guess I'm curious how you would maybe explain that or communicate that to someone if you don't feel like you have as much tangible monetary values to show.
Sure, so it's something that I'm hoping that we can dig into more specifically in the conference. And from a quantitative perspective, I found it to be difficult, but it's not my realm. So I think for people who are experts at this, they would be able to tell you better. Being able to survey your members periodically, even if it's not very scientific, gives you a little bit. But from a qualitative standpoint, case studies, stories, if you're just going on a tour with someone, little stories like the stories I told you make a huge difference. If I can just say, hey, Gina's a CPA. She's doing everybody's taxes. You think she's happy that she's here, of course. And Kevin, who did his Android development shop. So if you just have a couple of those examples, that makes a big difference. And if you haven't opened yet and you haven't started yet and you're projecting forward, then you can tell the stories of other people's co-working spaces and how that's happened. Yeah?
So,
Name city?
Oh, Tanya Malcolm, ground floor co-working space in Cranbrook, BC. My community is considered rural in the province, so under 25,000. So when approaching, so this is like under the sponsorship level, a lot of the big companies are still small business in my community, and so what we get back is a bit of resistance to so much asking, so much giving. Oh, high school's fundraising, right? Somebody's always fundraising, and so yeah, just any insight on how that money flows in more rural communities and how to get around that.
Sure. Is there a particular company that you can think of that you think really ought to be supporting you?
Well, I'm always thinking that there are some corporations in our community at the mall, right? There's like a Source, there's a Staples, there's the Canadian Tire, and I've been trying to make connections with those people,
Mhm.
and I still seem to get that same response. And I'm like, yeah, you're a small business because you're in a small community. Your bottom line isn't as big as the one in Calgary or Vancouver, but you've got money on top of you, like, come on.
So I'll just grab a quick example to kind of illustrate it.
Okay.
Is and it's a mindset shift that takes some time to practice. When we're asking, anybody know the book How to Win Friends and Influence People? I hate that title, but it's actually it's a genuine vibe on the inside, because it's about being authentic and it's about caring about the other person. And it's like old dude language from the early 20th century, but the message is in there, which is like, sorry, was that insulting?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
no, he's just, he is that, so just we're good.
So the reason I bring it up, because it's so good, he basically says, look, like, you talk to somebody, they don't care about you. They don't care about what you need. They don't. You have to assume that they don't. They don't have a reason to. They care about them and what they need. And so if you come in saying, like, if I come in and say, hey, I need you to help me. Can you give me some money, please? I'm like, no. But if I say, hey, I'm really curious about you and what's going on in your world, I think I might be able to help you, but I want to know what's going on with you first. So Staples, right? Retail is in trouble. Big box, retail, Staples. We know Staples is even doing partnerships with, they do a partnership with Work Bar, where they're opening co-working spaces inside their retail locations. I'd be very curious to know, is it possible to meet the manager of the Staples?
Yeah, I met him at the trade show last week.
Great, what's on his mind?
He wanted to know what was on my mind.
Okay, so what I'd want to know is, how can we have fun together? Is there something that we can do with Staples? Like, I like going to Staples. We can play with Post-it notes and markers and all kinds of fun, like office supply type stuff. Is there something fun that we can do that would be in alignment with what they're trying to achieve? And I don't know, maybe that guy doesn't worry about sales. Maybe, I'm assuming guy, girl, whatever, guy, non-gender specific. Like, that person is maybe trying to just recruit good people to hire and train. I don't know, well, maybe you can say, look, I'll tell you what's going on for me, but you got to tell me what's going on for you. I'll trade. I'll trade. I want to know how to help you. Otherwise, I'm not going to bother asking for your money. So I think we want to just try to dig into what those needs are, because what you find is, and this is actually, we'll talk community management for a moment, because it's totally analogous. One of the big problems we have in co-working community management is that people are renting offices to people who rent those offices, and they go work because they're busy. But then we try to build community. So now we have all these people who have this expectation of, I'm renting an office and I'm busy and I'm here to work. And now we're trying to get them to participate in stuff. Come to our happy hour, please. Leave me alone, please. I'd love to, I'm busy, but I'm sorry, right? And it's to the point where there are actual whole co-working space brands that are positioning themselves against this. WeWork, for all of its challenges around community, they're trying real hard. I mean, they bought meetup.com, for goodness sakes, right? Like, they really want community so bad, and you can tell they're struggling because they're still trying so hard. But they actually got this perception of, like, the community managers are pushing too hard. And so there are brands now that are saying, oh, we're not like WeWork, we'll leave you alone.
Yeah.
You can just focus, right? And so what's going on there? Because the people who are coming to these spaces need each other. They need community. They need somebody to help them figure out their taxes because they don't know what the hell they're doing with their taxes. I promise, like most of our members do not know what they're doing and they're terrified and they haven't filed their taxes in years. Like a lot of them. It's true, right? They won't raise their hands if you ask them, but like people need help with all kinds of stuff. People need help with sales. People need help with time management. People need help with cash flow. Like your people need help with all kinds of stuff, and they think they're too busy to make the time to do it. If you're trying to bug them to come to your thing when they're trying to get back to their stuff, because we don't have the right connection going there. However, if you hang out in your kitchen in the morning, in the beginning, it's the best time before people get sucked into their screens, and you're hanging out by the coffee pot, and you're like, hey, you know, what's going on? How's things going? You know, oh, you're doing that this weekend? That's so cool. You know, and you're just making conversation. And you say, well, so what's going on with your thing? Oh, well, I'm trying to figure out, this actually truly did happen. My friend Alex in the co-working space, she said, I'm looking for a bar where I can have like a quiet space in the back where, because, do you know of a place? I'm like, well, what do you want to do? She said, well, I want to do it like a freelancer support group because I want to process some stuff, and I know some other people who are like working through just the emotional challenge of being a freelancer, and so I want to create a support group, and I want to, but I want to be able to do that somewhere, and I'm looking at her, I'm like, why not? Why are you not doing it here? She's like, oh, you mean I could do that? Yes, please. I'm like screaming, like, yes, please do this here. And she says, well, but we'd want to be able to drink. I'm like, that's okay. Yes, we can. That's fine. We can do that here. You know. But the point was, if I tried to ask her to come to my thing, she'd probably tell me she's too busy. But if I talk to her a little bit, get to know her a little bit, you know, and let her needs come out, then these things start to emerge. And when they come to you ready, then we're not trying to get them to do a thing. We're solving the thing that is alive for them in that moment. And that's what we need to constantly be thinking about is that kind of direction. Is that, am I getting you? Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. We got a little bit on tangent there. What's up? Yeah?
It's fine.
Okay. Name, city.
Cristobal from Mexico, Playa del Carmen. There is a quick question that I just popped up last week about money, because like when we started like 4 years ago, there was no co-working space, so we were the only one. And like 1.5 years ago, it started popping up like 3 different co-working spaces, and we have like $250 per membership, and they just put like $245, which is okay. And then we start working like in a community, in like be so funny, cool, and all these things. But what happened like 3 months ago is that 5 different co-working spaces start just pop up, and they just reduce the prices like a lot. And last week, one of my managers, she asked me like, can we just reduce the prices because there are so many people who is going to the other co-working spaces? And I think that maybe these things happen in all over the world. So is there like a recommendation or something about
Yeah.
that?
What do we do when there's other spaces opening and they're starting to compete on price? Fair question, yeah? Okay, so for one, the fact that these spaces are opening is useful because it means that co-working is becoming more established in your city, more people are aware of it, and so there's a bigger market opening up. And we're still early in this. A tiny fraction of the potential accessible market for co-working is currently being accessed, and we can go into a whole conversation about it. Actually, it's kind of a money talk, so we could actually talk about it. But I'll say, just to generally kind of try to answer your question, if people are coming in and they're competing on price and you're losing members, then this this is business, right? This is what happens. Competition, the good thing about competition is it forces us to innovate, it forces us to evolve. And I'll tell you, like, I got in the same spot where I was getting creamed by guys in New York City, right? Like, the first WeWork was like 2 blocks from me, and a whole bunch of other guys who were raising a whole bunch of money. They had a lot more than I did. And some of them were straight up poaching my members. Like, I don't know how they got their info, but they went and said, we'll give you 12 months free. That was a sad Christmas for Tony. But you know what happened? I said, well, I gotta do something. And that was a time also when things culturally got really kind of bleh in the community. Like, it was 2012, we'd moved 2 years ago, and we got kind of into a rut. Everybody was just kind of coming in on their headphones, and I wasn't that excited, they weren't that excited, and that's why there was this exposure to competition, because we weren't giving people a reason to really be excited to be at my space. And so when I said, okay, January, we're gonna come back and we're gonna hit this hard and we're gonna assert ourselves. Well, when I got started, I could get away with just saying we're the co-working space. So if you want a co-working space, then you found it, that's it. I can't do that anymore, because now I got guys with piles of money across the street who are gonna be able to say the same thing. So now I needed to be able to do something that was more me. And that was when I created Cotivation, which was an accountability program. It's basically a mastermind group, but it took place in a co-working space. Set your goals for the new year and meet with a group of people who will help you to grow your business. And I made that my recruiting. So I didn't say come rent an office, I said come join for our program. And people came for that program, and it was like half new members and half existing members. And those people immediately formed an incredible community. They immediately started supporting each other in very specific ways. That Android developer guy needed help with marketing. The marketing consultant guy, literally, I was a semicircle, I'm pointing to this, I have a picture, right? That guy said, well, I'm a marketing consultant, let's sit down and talk. That guy has been working for that guy ever since, right? And so that took off like a rocket ship. And even though it was a relatively small group, it vitalized the whole community, and the business took off. So like 2013 and 14, we were powering through because we had this revitalization. So what I would say for you is, take the hurt of that, turn it into fire, and use it to kick ass. And maybe do a Cotivation group. I highly recommend it to every one of you. We can talk more about that as well. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, good. Yes?
Just quick, my name is Osama from Hustleco in Calgary this year. My question is, talking about numbers, what is the average profit that you should be looking for?
Yeah, average profit. So
from your experience, like you've been in the space for.
Yeah, sure. So you got to kind of, it obviously varies super widely, but what you want to do is you want to look at what the rent costs, add some overhead, and I forget what the exact percentage is. I can kind of look them up for you later. And then what other people are charging in the area, if you can, get a sense of what the office rental market is. I think that there's a general statistic, and Karsten, who does all the numbers, might be able to help us out, and he might be able to tell us tomorrow. Karsten, is there a stat on a co-working margin? Like how much, like what the profit margin is on a co-working space in general?
Yes, there is. It's 8%, 8 and 10%.
8 and 10?
We are when they're profitable. This question is not asked to not profitable co-working space.
So if it's not negative, then it's between 8 and 10.
When you just start a co-working space and you still have a high share of co-working spaces that just started, I mean, what would you ask?
Yeah.
Minus.
Well, what you can do is, like, in terms of maybe if you're talking to a potential financer or something, is that you can say, well, you know, the average office rental market is $30 a square foot, and the average income is, you know, $60 a square foot or whatever it is. You just figure out what the math is for what people charge for offices of different sizes, that kind of thing. Yes,
Yeah.
Clark. Yeah.
This is kind of for you, Tony, but for everybody too. So we are in the process of becoming B Corp certified, so triple bottom line business.
What is B Corp?
Yeah, dude.
What is B Corp? I know what it is.
Okay, I was like, so triple bottom line business, people, planet, profit, in terms of how we think about success and how we kind of talk about success. That's why I asked the question of kind of profit on the real estate side, but then also doing good and how we live in that tension. Have people found across different spaces that you run that your members or prospective members you're going on tours are asking about things like stewardship of resources? So we compost, we recycle. A lot of our facility is really green in terms of how we think about design. Is that something that people are asking about outside of the Southeast US or not so much?
Something that members are not asking, but I am.
Okay.
Because Puerto Rico's an island. We just had last year the biggest hurricane disaster, and we happened by chance to be connected to a generator that we weren't even aware of, which was a plus. It was why we didn't die as a company, because then we're the only co-working space that actually open like 2 days after the hurricane. But that's something that I want to start like spreading the word around, because like trash in Puerto Rico is starting to get overwhelming, and it's a very real estate is actually very cheap because there was a recession for 10 years. So I can't compete with prices per se, especially for bigger groups. But that is something that I'm really interested in. I want to, because no one's talking about it, and I don't think any of the other spaces are interested in. But my background's in architecture and like design development has always been really ingrained.
Well, that's because we do pay significantly more in terms of thinking about margins to do what we think is the right thing, versus other folks who might just not have that part of their program. So yeah.
I was just going to say that our tourism really asks, but I think it's part of cornerstone of our business as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just have to take into consideration that depending on the size of your space, you're dealing with 100 to 150 people or whatever. There's waste and then there's byproduct that you have to deal with. So I think tackling that from the very beginning and understanding that you are going to have all these streams of whether it's waste, compost, recycling, you have bathrooms that aren't dealt with by the landlord, and cleaning. Like there's a lot of stuff that you are going to have as a byproduct. So I think thinking about that kind of stuff in the very beginning will allow you to kind of deal with that, like, plan for it rather than kind of do it from an ad hoc basis. So no one asked, but I think anybody who's running a space should at least consider the impact that having coffee, tea wrappers, sugar packets, like all these little things matter, right? Like it may not sound like a lot, but think about having sugar packets for about 150 people who cups of coffee that a day. I mean, you can stretch that out over a year. Like you're generating a lot of waste, so you have to
You don't want to be behind on it. To put it the other way, right? I saw you. Yeah. Name and city again,
Yeah.
just to.
My name is Tara, and I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is central Canada. My clients don't necessarily ask for that specifically, but I'm Indigenous, and my focus target is Indigenous peoples, and we're considered land stewardship individuals, and that's our culture through and through. So I'm going to be certified B Corp once we open, not because my clients want it or know anything about it, but because that was really important to me to define to people around, because we're all connected, right? So the fact that I can put that, my clients are more concerned about the social impact on how they can do things. Like, oh, well, why aren't you a social enterprise? And I said, I've dealt with boards. I do consulting for them. It's awful, and I didn't want that for my own space. But it's hugely important for us. Composting, being aware of how much we're using resources, putting in the right kind of engagement model. It gets really hot in Winnipeg and really cold, so we go from about plus 40 Celsius, so about 102, 105 Fahrenheit to minus 40 over the course of the year. So when we're looking at energy consumption, that's really important for our people to make sure that we're doing that in the right way. And yeah, so I think it's important everywhere. It's just whether or not people are cognizant of it and know how they can contribute. So it's like straws. And even when you said sugar packets, there's sugar packets outside. There's a basket of them. I can only imagine how many people use this space. So
So I think the more you tell that story, the more you're able to tell that story, the better. Better, right?
Well,
So
it connects to the storytelling piece, right? In the American South, more and more people are asking that question, ironically. I think in terms of the tours that we have in this space in Raleigh, North Carolina, and yeah, people are starting to ask that. And the corporate companies I know you mentioned earlier, if they are going to have one of their teams, a marketing team, a design team, come inhabit our co-working space as an anchor tenant or whatever, they want to know that we are being good stewards of our resources.
Right, and my anchor tenant is the same way, they're
Yeah,
a First
yeah.
Nation government, and they're like, well, it's really nice, but we wanna make sure that, how are you helping us be better land stewards? And I was like, well, you're sharing the space with all of us other people, and we're cool, and like what you said, you're reducing the impact on spaces that aren't being used fully to their capacity, and how are we as owners really making our clients do that service?
do you think, I think we might have an unconference topic forming there. So let's keep that going. All right, yeah, go ahead.
Just one more thing on the triple bottom line, because I'm hearing a lot about the environmental piece, but more recently we've had an oil and gas company come in and they're interested in our private office, and I've one left to rent, and I'm like, to my boss, I'm like, we're not bringing oil and gas here, we're in Alberta now, but you know, I'm like, you know, we're gonna look toward clean energy, and I'm really, you know, social impact is huge for me, and I'm like, how is this gonna fit with our members? And my boss is like, no, it's gonna pay, you know, $700 a month for the office, and so that conversation is happening. So, of course, I go to my desk and I'm like, I'm gonna stop this, right? And that's how I actually discovered B Corp, because I Googled like, how do I become socially aware, like, you know.
So one of the things that I'm picking up on, and I think this is where, like, if we're steering this kind of into the finance realm, is oil and gas company wants to rent your last office, right? And you're not down for that kind of ethos, but you have to balance this. Is there a way you can go to that company and say, look, what initiatives do you have? Or what initiatives don't you have that you think maybe you ought to have? And then they tell you whatever that is, and then maybe that's a place where you can facilitate a conversation to say, you know, hey, let's get an oil and gas company in here so we can talk to them, they can hear us, and maybe we can all learn something, and maybe we can all do something together, and maybe they can, you know, pay for the beer and the cookies and the sponsorship, and yeah, exactly.
That's
yeah,
important,
yeah.
because we focus on inclusivity and not exclusivity, and you can't have a conversation if they're not there.
Yeah, I
you
agree.
know, but there has to be
That's my
balance.
first reaction, right? It's
Mhm.
like, wait, how is this gonna fit in with we have all the, I mean, I'm in southeastern British Columbia, like we're like, we got, my ethos is green companies, right? So it was, yeah, I wanna be inclusive, but my ethos isn't oil and gas, so.
Yeah.
But maybe they're doing something in their company.
And it's about that
That's-
conversation, same
yeah,
as
yeah.
going over to talk with, Staples, right? It's those conversations, and that's what I learned, let's have those conversations.
I'd really love it if we, you know, like if the way forward that we move towards a more peaceful and, you know, equitable world is that we, you know, can evolve these organizations and these companies and the cultures instead of like, I don't know, whatever the like really radical alternative is, you know? So, yeah, you know, but so the other thing, and I think that like, just to generify this to everybody here, what we're seeing is that there are personal interests and passions that are coming up. And they're really important to incorporate into the conversations that you have and the kinds of things that you do in a space. Because if you let your space just be a workspace, then it's not gonna be fun for your members, it's not gonna be fun for you. But if you can make this space a vehicle for important conversations that you want to have happening, or even just fun things that you want to be doing, I think it's hard to overestimate the value of having a physical space that's a good gathering space, that's a good event space, that's a place that these things can happen. And so whatever that personal interest and passion is for you, don't be afraid to go after it and recruit other people and do that, because it's going to nourish you, and people respond to soulfulness. And so if what you care about is visible and people see that and experience it, it'll be good for your bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah?
Sorry, I just want to build on that. That's great, because
Bless you.
my space is like a cultural neutral zone in the sense that we're for Indigenous people, because they're generally broken into three categories: First Nations, Métis, in my community. But yeah, no, I think that that's really great if you do build a truer sense of community when you're not segregating people or they're not segregating themselves.
And that's how we're gonna start pulling ourselves out of some of this messiness, right? If we can start being people together.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can have a civil political debate at some point. I don't know. Let's not get too ambitious. But all right, yeah.
I actually wanted to touch on, sorry, what was your name?
Tanya.
Tanya, okay. I wanted to touch on that kind of just struggle that you're in, because when, it's something we've talked about often at our space too, is like, what are our values and do we have a vetting process, and what does that vetting process look like in a legal sense, on a personal level, for a community, and we haven't quite figured that out exactly. I mean, right now there isn't really virtually a vetting process. It's like, come on. But I used to work in another space that was focused on social impact, and we were part of a collaborative alliance in our city, and so we meet once a month with other leaders in co-working, and I have no problem referring someone to another space that might be a better fit, and then they also send us referrals, and we've built a really awesome community where we say, oh, you're social impact, you're a women's empowerment space, like, let's help each other by creating the communities that we want to see in our spaces. And so it still is this inclusive experience, even if it might not be a good fit for us. And that's been really helpful for us personally. But I don't know, I mean, some people might be like, what are you doing? You're sending sales away to someone else. But
Somebody sends them to you.
yeah, but we've also gotten that in return, whether it's event space, conference rooms, a number of things. So.
There's a fine line there, but
Yeah.
standing for like you don't want to manage a room full of schmucks, right? I mean, it's true. Like, well, what's the point? So there's a line there. Yeah.
I'm Natasha, I'm from Victoria, BC. And I want to respond to both of those comments. I relate to wanting to create a space where people are going to get a podcast and share their ideas. I'm really uncomfortable with contributing to kind of siloed society where we all create what's it called, an echo chamber. So I don't want to do that with our space, but I do want to attract people who are interested in collaboration and conversation and debate and getting to know each other and being open-minded, where we can have people who are very environmentally conscious and maybe people who are involved in politics, and create opportunities for them to talk with each other. And my hope is that as I'm marketing the space and talking about what we do and what makes co-working different and special, and it's not just a place to just rent a desk, and I communicate these values of collaboration and conversation, having sometimes difficult conversations. We do self-filter. So, I don't want to turn anyone away, but I do want to make it very clear that we're part of this program, that we're not just a place to sit at a desk and not community, that, we only have so much space, that people are coming to the space for a certain product, a certain value, which is that they're going to be able to have people to talk to them, bounce things off, they're going to be able to network, collaborate with us. And so I just try and kind of make it clear when I'm talking to people and managers that if that's not what they're looking for, then you might be uncomfortable here, and then we may not have much space for other people at the same time. So I don't care so much what somebody does here on the street. I want to have a private space because there are people who work in the industries who share all of the values of companies, values respect and diversity, values of collaboration.
There's a space in Oslo, 657, and I haven't seen this too often, but Anniken, the woman who runs it, I think she's comes from a creative agency background, and she told me, and blew my mind, she said when she gives a tour and when a member applies, they ask the member what they intend to contribute to the community. and it's a required question. And it, you know, and I imagine they could be super broad about what that contribution could be. So not necessarily I'm gonna like donate my business services, but maybe I make a killer cupcake, you know, or whatever it is. But the point is that there is a expectation, and the communication during the onboarding process is huge for this. And it makes a big difference in terms of retention too. But if people during the onboarding process are given this sense of, oh, like being a part of this means contributing to it. And it also means that every person who's walked in the door before me has also made a commitment to contributing. So now I don't see a bunch of strangers, I see a bunch of people who have all bought into this idea that we're here to help each other. I wonder who here can help me. And you know, people like to feel helpful too. So if I know that you're expecting me to contribute, well, I feel good if I can be helpful to other people. So yeah, I think that's awesome. And I'd love to see more spaces emphasize the participation in the course of the onboarding and recruitment process.